Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another gun store vlog. About once a month, I like to come back to you guys with an industry update. A lot has happened over the past couple weeks, so let's go ahead and take a deep dive into all of that. If that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Okay, let's go ahead and start this video off by looking at demand in the industry. Obviously, things have been slowing down quite a bit. We talked about this in the last industry update video we did last month. Now, if we look at NICS data as an indicator, remember, not all firearms transactions go through a NICS background check. That's all relegated to what happens inside the confines of a federally licensed dealer's store or location of business. If we use that as a general barometer, we look at the background check numbers from June. They were at 3,054,000 and change. The numbers for July just came out, and they were sitting at 2,882,000 and change. So a definite drop from June, and June was a drop from May. If we look at the general seasonality of the firearms industry as a whole, there tends to be a little bit of a lag, a slowdown in the summer months. This has always been true if you look at the data going back to 1999, since this data has become available to us. Now, there was one outlier to that, and that was last year. Of course, demand was consistently high throughout the entire year, that we did not see any drastic seasonality changes. Demand stayed pretty consistent throughout the entire year. Now, that we're actually seeing some obvious seasonality in the firearms industry is a very good indication that things are definitely returning back to normal. If demand were at normal or at previously high levels, we would not be seeing the drastic seasonality changes that we're seeing. Now, I predict that through September and October, we're going to see the background check numbers pick up. Again, that leads into seasonality. Supply is becoming more available, and there's a bunch of stuff going on around the world that I think is going to cause an uptick in demand as well. And we'll get into a little bit of those things here in a minute. Now, if we look at the supply of firearms that are available to us through our vendors, they are undoubtedly becoming more available. We have started in the past month getting back to special orders for customers. Now, not everything is available, but we're seeing more availability through things like Glock, Smith & Wesson, AR-15s in general are starting to come back. A lot of the vendors are having trouble pushing those, so AR-15 supply through our wholesaler websites is pretty much completely restocked. We have even started running sales on AR-15s because we have several of them in stock that are not moving. You can see that that's consistently happening around the firearms industry, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have been getting sales notices, updates, and emails from the online vendors trying to move a lot of that type of inventory. So again, when you start seeing all the sales coming up, again, another good indicator that things are definitely returning back to normal. Now, one of the biggest questions that everybody always asks when I talk about supply is, what is ammunition looking like? Ammunition has undoubtedly been coming back too. We are just starting to get into a point where we are placing case quantity orders. Over the past year, when we have gotten a little bit of ammo shipments, they have been in 2, 3, 4 boxes at a time. Never really getting cases. Previous to the pandemic, we were able to order cases and cases, pallets of ammunition if we wanted to, because there was a wide availability of it. We're just now getting back to the case quantity thing. We can't get like cases of 9 and things like that, but we are able to get like a case at a time once or twice a week. So that sort of stuff is definitely coming back. Now, one sad news and a segue into the ammunition. I think this is going to throw a wrench in the cogs of this whole thing that's showing improvement, would be the new news of U.S. sanctions against Russian manufactured ammunition. This would include tool ammo, Wolf, even Red Army Standard originates in Russia. A lot of the cheap steel case 7.62x39, 9x18 Makarov, even 9mm Luger, 380, 32 automatic, a lot of that cheap stuff that comes in from Russia. There has just been sanctions imposed by the Biden administration. There's an interesting Ammo Land article, which I will leave a link to down in the description. The news of this broke just yesterday, so on August 20, 2021, the U.S. Department of State released a fact sheet announcing Russian firearms and ammunition importation will be banned for a minimum of 12 months starting in September, 7th of September 2021. So here, very, very soon, we're going to see a year-long ban. Now, a lot of this has come down to the United States trying to urge Russia against the use of chemical and biological warfare. Very, very interesting that they're choosing ammunition and missile components as the Russian export that they're slapping them on the wrist for, as if we look at Statista, it is very, very clear that mainly mineral products, metals, crude and refined petroleum, and wheat are the main exports from Russia into the United States. Of course, we are totally ignoring that. So I don't think that we're trying to show any teeth here on these sanctions. It just seems to be a way to put yet another wet blanket on the supply of ammunition. At least that is just my, my analysis. I don't always know what I'm talking about, but it's just really, really weird. It's almost like, it's very much a paper dragon move, and very, very frustrating as things are starting to get better with ammunition. Now, there are domestic manufacturers of 7.62 x 39 and 9 x 18. I'm just going to focus on 7.62 x 39 because that's the main caliber affected here. The main caliber that most people shoot that comes imported from Russia, as a lot of people have AKs, a lot of people have SKSs. Very, very frustrating because during the pandemic, the 7.62 x 39 ammunition was one of the most available ammo calibers for me to get as a supplier, and one that did not see a drastic increase in price. It was like the holdout caliber that everybody could reasonably get at a reasonably good price. I know things went up, but it wasn't like the tripling effect we saw in 9mm and 5.56. It was still sort of that holdout caliber. Now that is single-handedly being heard. A huge portion of the 7.62 x 39 market is produced in Russia, imported into the United States, the widely available and inexpensive ammunition. Now this is going to be on a year-long review. I don't think that this is ever going to be lifted. Sanctions from Chinese ammunition and firearms, sanctions against Russian firearms have never been lifted. This won't either. So I think what's going to have to happen is the gun industry is always really good at adapting, coming up with roundabout measures. There are several countries that have production of 7.62 x 39 ammunition. There are a lot of other countries that have manufactured this ammunition for their own personal militaries, as the AKM has been a standard platform in most of the world. So I think that U.S. domestic importers will try and find ways to find alternate sources. Hopefully that becomes the case, and we start seeing a new supply coming from somewhere else. Also, I don't know if Russia may sell ammunition to another country who then brings it into the country. We saw that happen with Russian AKs for a time, but that was put to an end in, I believe, about 2017. So I don't know. Time will tell on that, but it is definitely very bad news and is undoubtedly going to cause a turn in the pricing of at least those calibers, the 7.62 x 39 and 9 x 18 Makarov. Specifically, that has mainly been our main supplier coming from Russia. Now that on top of another bit of bad news, this doesn't really directly impact the gun industry as a whole, but I find incredibly ironic and coincidental. So, in the same week that this news breaks, also the United States pulls out of Afghanistan. Now I want to head this topic off by saying, if you are a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, over the past 20 years, you have lost friends, loved ones, received unreparable physical and emotional damage. As an American citizen, I want to send out a huge amount of, condolences to you for what has happened to the efforts that you have put into that war effort, trying to create peace and trying to create a safe environment for the citizens of Afghanistan, trying to maintain peace here in the United States, trying to maintain a level of freedom here in the United States. Totally disgusted. I can't think of any other word, but I'm disgusted about what this decision has been led into. I stay away from politics on this channel, but I find that this is a very apolitical topic. I find that from listening and watching other people, generally all Americans across the aisle, for the most part, are hugely disgusted by what is happening in Afghanistan. Least of all, we pull out without any type of plan, putting the citizens there in a tremendous amount of risk. That's very clear by the sheer terror that we witnessed watching news, people clinging to aircraft and whatnot, people handing their children over barbed wire walls at the airport. I can't even imagine putting myself in that position. But on top of that, we leave millions, if not billions of dollars of war material right there for the Taliban to take possession of and to use in their terror tactics against any people. I think that we will probably end up in a war there again, and this time the Taliban have strategic positions, they have a ton of war material and equipment, and it's going to undoubtedly lead to more pain and suffering. That goes without saying. All of that happening in the same week that we get not only ammunition from Russia banned because of their use of chemical warfare, but we can give the Taliban a huge arsenal of weapons because we know that they're going to do good with it, right? So not only that, but we as citizens of the United States can't even have simulated automatic fire weapons, let alone M249s and M16s. So that leads into the Rare Breed discussion. A lot of you guys, if you haven't been paying attention, Rare Breed is a company that makes a force reset trigger. Force reset principle as when the bolt is coming back, it's pushing the trigger back, it's forcing it back into the reset. If you keep constant pressure on the trigger, you can get a very high cyclic rate on the firearm. Now, I've never shot one. That's just my interpretation by watching people use them and kind of a brief explanation of how they work. Still maintains its semi-automatic nature, as you have to pull the trigger one time to get one bullet down range. Keeping a constant, like squeezing the trigger all the way back, would even cause the Rare Breed trigger to fail. So there is some learning curve to it, but definitely does not apply, at least to our current regulations and the definition of what a machine gun is. Because of that, the ATF did send a cease and desist to Rare Breed, which stood their ground and sent a return letter basically denying any type of follow-up, or at least they're not going to cease their operations. It was their letter that they had sent to them, I'll leave a link in the description, was very well written, almost seemed preemptive, like they had already, they already knew that this was going to happen. There's been some back and forth with the ATF. I just wanted to give them a shout out. This is the first time we've seen a major firearms manufacturer actually stand their ground in this type of regard. I'm really, really happy that they're doing that. And I'm really happy to see how this plays out. And undoubtedly, this will go through the courts like the bump stock thing. The force reset trigger, if that were to go through, would open up a huge amount of potential, a huge amount of doors in the firearm industry for new products that I think would be really interesting. There's a lot of semi-automatic conversions that are out there, from like World War II firearms to semi-automatic RPKs and heavy-barreled, AR-15, M16 variants. Really, really cool technology that is, I hope to see that they stand their ground, that they're able to prove that it does fall within the legalities of the way things are written. We all know how this sort of thing turns out. But that would be really, really cool for the industry. So excited to see that turn out well, and maybe we as citizens of the United States can one day be as well armed as the Taliban. So really weird aspirations, but hey, I'll take it. I also want to reiterate that this is a firearms-based channel, so I'm looking at this from the perspective of the gun industry. I know that there are heavier implications of what is happening abroad that are far more important than what's happening to the gun industry. Innocent lives, civilian lives, and things like that, of course, are paramount when things like this happen, but I'm at least I always use the perspective of how things affect the gun industry when I do these videos, so please don't think I am removing gravity from the weight of what is happening abroad with the people living in the Taliban, living in Afghanistan under the Taliban control right now. So, anyway, guys, hate to end this on a bad note, but that is kind of the news for this month. Let's hope to continue to see at least the availability of ammunition and firearms returning. Again, I think with the sanctions on that ammunition, it's going to cause a little bit of a dampener on that. But we'll hopefully keep our ear to the ground and hopefully see some better improvements in that regard as well. But I'm going to leave you guys off with that. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that like button. Please also consider subscribing and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when I am posting new content. I'm going to leave you guys off with that. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.